decided not to press any charges. They're only requiring you to do community service.
Who's that?
That is Noah. Yeah, he's the guy who stole from the church.
I'll just preach about love, but Christians are some of the most hateful people I know.
How many Christians could you possibly know?
Enough to know I'm not lying.
Have you ever heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover?
No, I was saying, Jonah and...
Yeah. How's that working out for you?
Many of you have been asking if we'll ever do Vacation Bible School again, and the answer is yes! Cassie's leading VBS next month, and we want to thank her.
I'm not going to be able to help you with VBS anymore.
I'm
sorry.
I think we should consider postponing VBS.
God is not asking you to be perfect. He's just asking you to be willing.
Yeah, I can help you if you want. I grew up going to church, so I know all about VBS.
I don't understand why you would want to help.
Well, maybe I just want to help you. Here, let me help. I got you.
God gave Jonah a second chance.
She's too good for me, bro. Cassie, any guy would be lucky to be with you.
You're a great guy, Noah. But you have to believe it.
In the Gospel of Luke, we hear about the story of the prodigal son.
When his father sees him, he throws a celebration.
If we don't get that money, we're back out on the streets like we used to be. And I'm not losing everything again.
I'll always take care of you, no matter what.
It's better to be on the streets with your family than no family at all, right?
He was lost. Now he's found.
Thank you for joining us on the Downing Cut. Today, my guest is Daniel Chang. He is a photographer, sound mixer, director, cinematographer, and has worked on films like My Face, Second Chance, and Dead Deer. He has also directed his own films, and he has a nice Instagram page that has a lot of his work on there. And we just discovered his IMDb. So we're going to link that in the show notes for sure. How are you, Daniel?
Doing good. Happy to be here. Kind of in between gigs right now. I don't have anything until Saturday, so I'm glad you caught me at a good time.
Until Saturday. Well, you're working it, man. Let me ask you, first, when did you start becoming a photographer? And then how did that lead into the sound mixing and directing and cinematography?
Okay, so I have to go way back to when I was in film school during, I guess they call it the DSLR revolution back in the early 2010s. I had heard that these little cameras meant for photography could get really cinematic looking video for like less than $1,000. So I immediately jumped on that bandwagon and started making, not even making movies. I just started like recording videos with it, mostly for fun and to test it out. And since it was a stills camera primarily, that's how I got into photography.
Oh, okay. So film was first and then photography.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And then when you started doing your own films, when did you start going into sound mixing? How did that develop?
Well, first of all, when I was just starting out making my own videos and stuff, I just used like an onboard microphone that I would plug into the camera. I was like, this is not a good way to get sound. I really want to get better at this. But I just kind of held that thought for a pretty long time. And then around 2020, 2021 is when I started working in film as a production assistant. And they were telling me, yeah, while you're working this entry-level position, look at all the different departments on a film crew and figure out which one you want to join. And I was torn at first between locations and sound. I like the idea of locations because I like exploring new places and like going into cool buildings. And I figured that would be a good niche for me. But when I found out that locations was a lot of grunt work and 16-hour days, I was like, maybe let's see how sound is. And then sound seemed like a pretty reasonable job. Working as a PA, I would tell people on set, yeah, I'm looking to go into sound. And they would tell me a lot of encouraging things like, you'll never be out of a job. Or, yeah, sounds a good gig. And, yeah, I took a chance. In 2022, I joined Northwest Film Forum's Action Narrative Apprenticeship Program, which was meant to help people from historically marginalized groups get into film and work in a department other than being entry level. So my mentor was Mike Clevin, a local sound guy. Oh, yeah. And he trained me, kind of showed me the ropes with his gear and stuff. And I was like, I really enjoy this. I think this was a good idea. So I would say within a year of completing that program, I had saved up enough money to invest in my own kit. And I just, once you have a kit and people in town know that you have it, like people will start offering you work. It starts small, like really little narratives for little to no pay, and then you slowly move your way up from there. And that's where I'm at in the process right now.
That's awesome. Well, what does a kit involve? Like, for those who don't understand what a sound mixer does, what do you need to get?
There's a bazillion little things you need to get as a sound mixer, but like I would say the core components are your field mixer / recorder. That's like the big chunky thing that goes inside your bag. For that, you also need a mixer bag. It's like a bag that holds the mixer and your transmitters. Transmitters are important. Lav mics, for people who don't know, are those little microphones on a wire that you will conceal under an actor's costume. And then you attach a wireless transmitter and receiver. I'd like to make a correction to my earlier statement. It's the receivers that go into the bag and the transmitters that go onto the actor. Yeah, and then you'll also need like a big battery pack to power your mixer, like a bunch of cables to connect everything. And, of course you need a boom pole and a boom mic. And ideally you would want to have like several microphones in your kit. I have a shotgun mic that I use mostly outdoors, and a super cardioid microphone I use mostly indoors, depending on the situation.
Interesting. Okay. What does a mixer do? Explain that to the audience like we're 5.
Let's see, how would I explain it to a small child? Well, first and foremost, it's the recorder. It's the machine that's actually recording the sound that it's receiving from the microphones that you have plugged in. But the mixing part is there's multiple channels on the mixer. Like channel 1 usually is boom, and then channel 2, 3, 4, and so on are typically your lav mics or whatever other microphones you might have set up. For film and video production, it's almost exclusively recording on a boom and lavs. So for each of those tracks, you can decide how much you want to add into the mix, which is what you would send to, I don't know, like the production team after each shooting day. Sorry, I need a little minute to think for this.
Yeah, no worries. Like, so what I think of like what a sound mixer is doing and I don't know because I've never done it, is that you guys are adjusting levels, right? That's part of it, from peaking.
Yeah.
What about frequencies and stuff?
Yeah, so the mixer part of the name comes from, you can decide how much of each like channel you want to have added into the final mix. Like you can turn boom up or down and lavs up or down into the mix. Although this is largely a misnomer. Nowadays for sound, the people in the editing room are going to use mostly your isolated tracks. So they're going to use just boom, just lav, and typically not a mix of both. Mixing is typically something that comes from like music production and live events. Does not apply so much to film work. For film, yeah, it's mostly a matter of adjusting the levels, making sure your each track is not too loud or too quiet. And generally, it's better to go a little too quiet than a little too loud. If the sound is loud and blown out, there's really very little they can do to fix it. If it's a little too soft, they can boost it, and it's usually not too much of a problem.
Interesting. So are you recording on an SD card or some kind of memory drive or something like that, or are you plugged into the camera?
Oh, my mixer in particular uses records both on SD cards and on an internal hard drive on the mixer itself. So if something like goes wrong with that card, if it gets lost, if it gets corrupted, everything I've recorded that day is still recorded onto the mixer itself, and I can plug that straight into their computer so they can still get their files.
Oh, very nice. When you're recording with labs, you ever run into like frequencies or RF feedback or anything that you can start hearing, like, static?
Yeah, so running into signal interference on labs is a pretty consistent issue. I use analog frequencies. I've heard digital can be a little bit cleaner, but with analog, often if you're like in the middle of the city, say Seattle Center, you can have a lot of competition for frequency within a certain block, which, a lot of local sound mixers get aggravated about that. And sometimes like a channel will be perfectly clean, but then when you start rolling, suddenly you hear static and feedback. And I mean, like, you have to kind of make judgment calls. You have to figure out, is it bad enough that I have to stop and say, hey, I got to make an adjustment. It's going to be a few minutes. Or do you say, okay, based on the production schedule today, I don't think they're going to have time to sort through this, and we're going to have to power through. And it can be a tough judgment call because production crews will generally not have a lot of grace or understanding for sound. Like, something goes wrong with camera or lighting or something, like, they will generally understand. But sound, I think because relatively few people have done the job and understand what can go wrong with it,
Yeah.
a lot of them will typically not understand when you have to stop and make an adjustment. And like, something that we worry about a lot is that it'll make us look bad. Like, oh, if we need to stop and make adjustments often, then that might read as incompetent. And they might be like, well, I've worked with this other sound guy who did not have that issue. So what's going on, pal? And those kinds of things may or may not be your fault. And it's something that the rest of the team may or may not understand. That, I think, is one of the main challenges of working sound on a crew.
Interesting. I was talking to someone else about how valuable sound is, and that sound is really the soul of the film. It really is, because if you don't have it, you don't have a lot of the emotional aspect of it. And obviously the dialogue and stuff like that. But what technique would you use for lav? Because I know from experience, my own, and then other people's experiences, where you always hear a little bit of ruffling on the shirts or underneath the clothes and stuff like that. What would you recommend, and how to fix that?
I would say the number one way to reduce lav noise, like rustling and stuff, is just for the actors to wear costumes that don't generate a lot of noise to begin with. So leather jackets, silk, starchy dress shirts. There's just a lot of materials that are not great for sound if you're using lavs. But of course, like some movies are just going to require that the actor wears some type of outfit that is not conducive to sound, and then that's something you have to work around.
Yeah.
Ideally, you just want to try to mount the microphone somewhere where there's a little bit of space between the fabric and the actor's body. Or if they're wearing something super tight that's not going to rustle at all, then, I mean, you don't have to worry about the noise as much, but then you have to worry about the wire being visible. I would say, like, each outfit that an actor can wear is like a puzzle that the sound person has to solve as they mic them up and figure out the best way to mount it, conceal it, and just get it sounding clean. Easier said than done a lot of the time.
Are you taping the mic to the body, or are you taking it to the clothes?
It depends. Like, often my go-to is to tape and stick it somewhere around their sternum. That's generally the place that generates the least fabric noise. If talent wears a bra, I will often just clip it to the bra, which is actually much easier and cleaner than having to deal with tape and stuff.
Yeah.
There are occasional times when there is no way to hide it under their clothes and then have to figure out some other solution. One time I was working with an actress who like with her outfit, it was just making too much rustling noise. It was really egregious. But then I figured out she had long hair that was down, and she was wearing a headband. So I actually took the microphone and taped it to her headband, and then that sounded perfect to me.
On the inside?
Yeah, I couldn't put it on the outside just because it would be showing.
But
yeah,
it's not. There's no movement or sound coming from her, just moving her hair or anything like that.
No, not particularly. Like, it was certainly much better than having it under the shirt, like I originally had planned.
Interesting. So you've been in the business. You work on film. You're shooting your own films, and you've been on sets. I ask everyone this question: when you're experiencing what you've seen and worked with actors, what makes a good actor?
Oh, what makes a good actor? But you're asking the sound person.
Yeah, you have an opinion.
What do I think? I think it's a matter of them understanding the assignment and then also being able to demonstrate through their performance that they understand the assignment. Like when they read the script, ideally I would hope that they see what kind of person the character is and they're able to infer that through the context of the story and their actions and what they're saying. And then also figuring out, okay, based on what type of person they are, how would they say this line in this situation? And then, like, the first step, I think, is understanding where that character is coming from. And then the next step is understanding how to express that in a way that reads well on camera. Now, that part is important because you could totally act how that character is supposed to act. But if you do it the wrong way, it's just not going to read well. And I think a good actor would understand that sometimes you have to act a little bit different on camera than you would in person, just for that to read across between the barrier of the screen.
Yeah. What about when you read scripts? So obviously you're getting a copy of the script, right? And are you reading through it? In your mind, are you going, this would be a boom, this would be a lav? Are you doing any kind of that, like assessment?
Yeah, so when I read through a script, like besides, just seeing if it's a movie I like or if the reading about the story or stuff, beyond that, for my technical analysis, the number one thing I look at is how many speaking parts do we have in this scene? So typically I'll look at the number of characters and be like, okay, this is the number of labs I would probably need. And if it's a very large number of speaking roles and I don't have enough labs for it, like my next question is, which of these lines or which of these actors within this scene could do without a lab? Do they have just one throwaway line? Or are they sitting next to someone else who I can easily swing the boom over to? Yeah, so there's that part. And then also I will think about where the scene takes place. City streets means there's going to be a lot of background noise. Exterior forest, you would think that wouldn't be a lot of noise, but there could be like a construction site somewhere nearby. It could be playing as a forest, but actually right off a major road. A really big one is if it takes place in a diner, bar, or restaurant. Because when we're filming in there and we get it real quiet, often they'll still have like a big refrigerator or something like running in the kitchen. And they'll be like, sorry, we can't actually turn this off because we got perishables in there. So like there might be something that's going to generate a lot of noise. So then that's more of something I would deal with on set, like just trying to see if we can film further away from the actual kitchen, or seeing if we can set up sound blankets to try to muffle the noise.
Have you done that? Does it work? I mean, setting up sound blankets?
Yeah, actually, so for the short film that we all made together for my apprenticeship program, we were filming inside a bar and restaurant, and there was quite a bit of noise coming out of there. But conveniently, the kitchen had just kind of like this open doorway. And so I got the grip team to help me like put up a blanket against that. And since it was just the one opening where the sound was coming from, we were able to mitigate most of the noise from that.
Very nice. What do you think that the technique, and I've seen people do this, I've been guilty myself, where if people are sitting at the table and they're wearing clothes, but you're like, that's going to make a lot of noise. What about taping the lav to the table, like on a glass or behind something? Have you ever done that? Is that a recommendation or anything, or is that a big no-no?
Oh yeah, plant mics are a good idea. I haven't actually done it much myself, but Yeah, that's a great technique. I mean, the idea is that the lav would be really close to the actor's mouth.
Yeah.
So if you can figure out a way to get that lav like as close to their mouth or their chest as possible within the scene and still keep it concealed, yeah, I would say definitely go for it. If the outfit that they're wearing is just really not working for being mic'd up.
Yeah. How has your experience as a sound mixer and boom operator influenced the way you approach visual storytelling in photography and film directing?
You know, it's funny. So the last time I actually made my own film was 2020. Ever since I actually started
Oh,
working in the industry, I have not been working on my own projects.
okay.
Back then, it was mostly because I was stuck in low-wage day jobs, and I was like, this isn't fulfilling at all. It's kind of
Yeah.
does not feed my soul. I need to do something outside of work that's going to make me feel better. And so, like photography and making videos and movies, that was my escape from work. But now that I am actually working in film, which I've wanted to do ever since I was a young adult, I'm like, oh, well, now I do feel fulfilled. And actually, this takes quite a bit of conscious effort. And like, I really have to put myself into it. So I often just don't feel as compelled to make things. But if I did, um, yeah, if I were going to make my own project, I think I would just start out writing however I want to write, just make the story I want to make. But then after that, I might do a run through and think, okay, how would this actually work for sound? So all the things that I tell you that I look out for when I'm making a movie, I would also look out for that in my own script for the sake of whichever sound person I would bring onto my project. And since sound is one of the harder roles to fill, I'm actually not above the idea of being both sound and director for my next project that I make.
Yeah.
I
How
would
do you do
probably
that?
also want to get a sound assistant for sure, but
Okay.
maybe just use my own gear.
Yeah. I did that. I made my first film and ironically didn't even think about sound as I was writing the script and finding the locations. I think we did visit certain locations. I think I did kind of like listen to see if there was any kind of noise. We did film at a bar. We did have to ask them to turn off the fridge. I do remember that. And then I didn't have a sound guy, but I had a storyboard artist who's 6'3".
Mm.
So I'm like, you're gonna be the sound guy. He's like, okay, and it worked, because of his height and everything. Um, what are the key challenges in balancing audio and the visual elements? Obviously, you haven't done it recently, but when you're behind the camera and managing sound on set, that you found.
Okay, I think the biggest issue is that sometimes if you want a really good camera position or actor blocking or lighting, like all that could look great, but if it's going to generate too much boom shadow from every angle like they try to boom from, like that, if you have dialogue in that scene, that's going to be a lot of compromise. And at that point, you have to ask yourself, are you going to compromise sound for visuals here? Are you going to do ADR? Because there is also the point that you can't really fix bad lighting or bad camera in post, but I mean, bad sound technically can be fixed in post.
Yeah.
Not that you should. Like, nothing you do on set should be something that you've done and, like, hand waved as something you can fix in post. That is just the wrong approach to production. But I mean,
Absolutely.
if there's one thing you could afford to sacrifice out of those things, you technically could sacrifice them. That's not great sounding from I'm coming from a sound mixer, but I mean, if anything, I think that might be the reason why we tend to get thrown under the bus more than other departments,
Really?
because I think because people know it is possible to fix it in post. There's going to be compromise again because
Yeah.
like if it's a really emotional scene, it's going to be really hard for that actor to get that same energy just recording in a studio, watching themselves talk on loop. So
Yep.
yeah, pick your battles. Definitely prioritize sound as much as you can. I'm sure you could move that one light and it would still look great.
Yeah. We did a live shoot. I think it was 2017. It was called Western Soul, and we did it live. It was during the eclipse. We all drove to Wyoming, and they shot it. They had a satellite truck, the whole 9 yards, and we had a boom operator. I do remember that, but the audio for whatever reason didn't come out, so we had to do ADR on the whole thing, and that was tough. It was pretty. I felt like you could tell it wasn't from the site. It just felt that way when I heard it. But it was an interesting experience. But for sure, I mean, you definitely want to try to capture it all in the same time.
Yeah, you did bring up a good point there about if you do re-record dialogue in post, like it will, like people can often pick up on really subtle things. Like it doesn't sound like it's there, like even if they've done their best to replicate it. I think one of the biggest things is if it was an outdoor scene and you re-recorded indoors, like it's just going to not sound outdoors. There's just a different sort of quality to the sound that I don't know how to describe in words, but I think most people know what I'm talking about when I remember.
And like it sounded too clear. It was like too crisp or something, to that aspect of versus being outdoors. Because I mean, they had the makeshift sound booth is what we did, and but I mean, it worked. Really, I mean, it all matched up. We all lined up and we practiced. All the actors came in and did it. What? Well, this is kind of an obvious. I'm not going to ask. It was just about your choices of locations and photography and directing film. What have you learned from observing other directors on set as a sound mixer that you are applying to your own directing?
I often like the way they communicate. They know how to be considerate of the actor's feelings and not make them feel undermined or like they're wrong. So if they tell the actor they want the scene done a certain way, and then the actor does not do it that way, they'll be like, this is great. Can we try also the other way just so we can have that option in the can? Instead of saying, no, it has to be this way. Like, actors often are like sensitive types, which makes sense because, I mean, to like understanding and expressing emotion professionally often requires you to be a little bit more sensitive. And so, I mean, ideally a director would be mindful of that and know how to be soft and kind of kind to the actor and not bruise their ego or make them feel attacked, not make them feel like they're wrong. It's a lot of just emotionally intelligent, like soft skills in talking to them, I think is something important.
Yeah, all based on communication. Have your experience on set, have you ever had any actors kind of give you any kind of negative feedback or like boom's too close or have done any type of thing like that? Or it kind of disrupts your flow?
I don't specifically recall any time that the actor had negative feedback from. Oh wait, no. Sometimes they will complain about. It's almost always about the labs. Like if the mic pack is like pressing into their side a little bit, they'll ask me to make an adjustment. Or if their skin is starting to get raw from all the tape, I might consider an alternative way of mounting it. Almost all of it has to do with the comfort of how they are mic'd up and how that's working with their body and the outfit that they're wearing.
How has sound evolved in the actual processing and the tools and the labs? I mean, I don't know how many transmitters there are nowadays. I mean, there's a ton. And then you have the I don't even know what to call them. You have the little ones, DJI makes them. I think Rode has their own little pack.
Yeah, we still call those labs.
Okay. How do you feel about how it's changing over time and, like bit 32 float, 32-bit float? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I'm actually so new to the industry, having done sound for about 2 years, that I don't actually have a very strong concept about what it used to be like. And I haven't asked a lot of the older mixers about how things have changed over time. I understand that the fundamentals of the job are still largely the same. I have been thinking more about using digital transmitters and receivers and thinking about the possible benefits they could have. And nowadays there is a lot of talk about 32-bit float, which allows you to basically, I don't know, you just have such a wide range that almost nothing will clip or come out too soft. I haven't actually worked with that. I understand that for a lot of professional workflows, like they're designed to work with 24-bit. And so 32-bit is just something new that a lot of traditional workflows will just not fully accommodate for. There are a lot of purists that I have heard older mixers kind of mock 32-bit float for being kind of easy mode, for being the equivalent of a seasoned camera operator using autofocus. I don't know if I would have such a snob-nosed attitude towards 32-bit float. I think it's great if, particularly for people like me who are mixing and booming instead of having like a dedicated person sitting at a soundboard writing levels while one person is just booming. So for people who have to mix and boom at the same time, I think 32-bit float is great. That's like something that could really help you out in a lot of situations. And generally, I'm not somebody to dismiss new, convenient, easier ways of doing things as like bad. That's a sort of boomer mentality that I really don't want to bring to the table.
Tell me the process as far as when you're connected to the, are you connected to the camera? Is the director listening into what you're hearing as well?
So I typically don't plug straight into camera, but I will sync timecode with the camera and my mixer, and I can also I can do what they call sending scratch audio. So I can plug a receiver into the camera and have a transmitter into one of my outputs on my mixer, and that will send the sound that I'm recording straight to camera, so it's attached to their track. It's really useful for them. A lot of cinema cameras don't record audio on their own, so it can be great to have that audio track just automatically attached to the video track for easy reference and for like rough edits and stuff. Yeah. And then also I have Comtex or IFBs. So these are little headsets. Same idea. It's a transmitter attached to my mixer and a receiver attached to a pair of headphones. And then the director and typically the script supervisor will each have a headset, and they'll listen in and they'll hear a direct feed from what's coming from my mixer.
Okay, so that's nice. So you're not really kind of going in the blind, if you will. Like, at least you have some feedback from the director going, "Hey, that sounds great," or "That's too loud," or anything like that, right? At least you're getting some positive feedback on what you're doing, and you're not kind of shooting blind or recording blind, I would say. What have you been on a set where that didn't happen, where they didn't hear anything and they couldn't hear anything and you were just recording? Does that take a lot of faith?
There are a fair number of projects, mostly smaller ones, where where they just didn't ask for context, or for whatever reason they were not listening in on my audio tracks. For that, they were definitely just taking a leap of faith and saying, "We trust that you know what you're doing, and if there's any issues that come up, you'll tell us." Although often, for listening in on context, they're not doing it so much to assess audio quality, but more like if the director and the script supervisor are not directly on set and they're just watching through a monitor, they want to listen to make sure that the actor's performance is right, that they're saying the lines the way that they would want them to. So oftentimes it's really just for monitoring and keeping track of what is being said, as opposed to having a second set of ears to monitor sound quality, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. The what advice would you give somebody who is looking to get into the film industry and wants to do sound but doesn't have a clue on where to start and what to do? And right now they're used to buying the Rode mics or the little lavs that you just clip on close, but they want to get more professional at it and do a boom and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely recommend a number of things. First of all, like, it's super obvious, but try to look for resources online. Like, there's not nearly as many how-to videos and articles on sound as there are about camera, but they are out there, so that is a good place to start. And I would say the next step would be to look into their local film scene. Like, try to figure out like who is working in production in your area. And a good way to do that is to start looking up film festivals and see what's going on. see if there's any film schools nearby or if there's any resources that are hosting workshops. Out here, like I would say Washington Filmworks and Northwest Film Forum have traditionally been the two big go-tos. And if they don't have something for you, they can definitely point you in the right direction. But yeah, like I would say do your own research to start out and then try to figure out where to start looking. And then, yeah, when you're out there meeting people who are tied to the film industry, make sure you let them know that you're trying to get into sound. And they will likely point you in the direction of an older like sound mixer who is looking for someone to mentor, because we enjoy doing that.
Oh.
And yeah, that's a good way to get started. Also, like a lot of these very small projects, like a more experienced mixer will not work on them. Be like, no, sorry, I don't work on this small scale project anymore. So there's actually a lot of demand for people who are just starting out in sound or trying to learn the craft, because I mean, that's an excuse to find someone who will do it for free.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, get on those people's radar, put yourself out there, say, yeah, I'm interested in this, willing to learn, willing to start out working for free. Like just putting that out there, honestly, I think that can go a long way.
Absolutely. That's what we did as actors. 100%. I mean, I still do it. So what, now you're full-time in the film industry?
Yeah, I mean, work has been really slow lately, so I'm not quite working full-time hours.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been working mostly as videographer and photographer for the local burlesque and drag scenes.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's a niche I found back around just a little bit before the pandemic. So I've been doing that in tandem with my work in film production, which I think is neat. They're two very different worlds that I get to be part of. And whenever I see a little bit of overlap, like if there's a performer I know who is also an actor on the side and is acting in a movie I'm in and I get to see them on set, that's super exciting. Or if I'm working at a burlesque festival and they needed a last minute production assistant and it's someone I worked with in film, it's like, wow, they get to see this side of my life now. And that's also very exciting for me.
How did you land that gig? How did you get into that niche?
When I was new here in Washington, I had moved here from the Bay Area back in about 2015. So yeah, when I first came here, I didn't know anyone. I had never been here before. I would just go out to just events and things that seemed interesting to me. And then I would go out and make friends. And wherever I was out and about or even at work, I would always tell people about what I was interested in doing, like photo, video. I just want to do stuff with my camera. So yeah, I met a friend when I went out to a rock concert, and I was telling her, yeah, I'm trying to find people who want to make videos and stuff. And she said, okay, well, I know some friends who are kind of creative or might be interested. I can start a group chat. And then one of them said, oh, do you want to come videotape a burlesque show? I was like, yeah, sure. So I showed up and videotaped their show. And I think that's what put me on the radar and like got me going, especially since I did that one for free because I had no experience doing that specifically.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you're new to something and you're willing to work for free starting out, there are producers who have very little budget who would be like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. And then eventually you can start charging rates once you know what you're doing. And that's what I did. Now I'm here.
You weren't bringing your camera with you everywhere you went, and you were just telling them, you were just networking? Because I would think if I was a photographer, I'd probably bring my camera everywhere.
Yeah, I actually always was that type of person. Like I bought my first camera, I think in 2011 or 2012. And I didn't own a smartphone until 2016. So I was never really taking pictures on my phone because I didn't really have a decent phone camera to take it with. So yeah, I was using my camera for even just like stuff I wanted to take pictures of or record personally or just for fun. Yeah. Like, yeah, I was bringing my camera everywhere with me. In hindsight, like, I think I'm a little bit lucky I never got mugged. But yeah, I would often just take the risk of walking around, often alone, just get in the streets just with my camera.
Yeah.
And I guess I knew there was a little bit of risk involved with that, but I didn't care. I think, yeah, if there's something you really love or something you're really passionate about, it's worth taking a little bit of risk for. And I think anybody who's like an entrepreneur or has started their own business will absolutely second that opinion.
Oh yeah, for sure. What kind of camera do you use?
Currently, I have a Sony A7 III. It's a good all-around camera. I chose
Yeah.
it because it's said to be good for both photo and video. And since I do both of those types of work almost in equal amounts, I figured that would be the good, like, all-in-one package for me to get.
Yep. We shot our first film, Pyrocene, on the A7 III. What lens do you prefer?
For the events that I shoot, I'm typically somewhere in the audience in a theater or a theater type space. So my go-to is to get as far away as I can and then use a sports lens. It's a 70 to 200. And then I'll, yeah, just get in really close from behind. And I like that range. I'll try to be somewhere in the venue where I can punch in really close, like waist up or something, for when the performer's serving face really well, and I want to capture that. And also zoom out like really far if they're going to be doing something with like silk veils that are going like high above their head and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. How much does that lens weigh?
Mine is pretty light. It's an f4, so it's just smaller and lighter than a 2.8.
Yeah.
It is fairly heavy, and actually between my camera work and my sound work, it's really important for me to keep hitting the gym and making sure I stay strong. Yeah. Like, people chuckle at that, but honestly, if I'm not strong enough to do my job effectively, that is an absolute liability to my livelihood. So yeah, I just gotta make sure I'm eating enough protein, I'm lifting enough weights. And I also gotta make sure that I never skip leg day, because if I get too top heavy and my balance is poor, also that is a straight up safety issue, and I can't afford that for myself.
Yeah, 100%. What do you have a technique of holding the boom? Are you wearing gloves? Or what kind of harness are you wearing for your mixer? Like, I mean, because you see it on set, but is there a technique into what you're doing, the products you're choosing? Is there a certain case that you're using, to offset the load? Because I can't imagine, like, I have a day pack that I wear, and that pulls out my back. So I can't imagine having a mixer.
Yeah, that it's the equivalent of, imagine wearing like a backpack for school, and you've got maybe two books, like big textbooks in there, but you're wearing it backwards and it's hanging low, like over your belly. That's basically what it feels like, which is fine for a couple minutes at a time.
Yeah.
I would say I handle that. Like, booming actually is not nearly as hard as just the strain of wearing the bag. And if you're wearing both the bag and booming at the same time, like when you boom, you have to push your shoulders up while the bag is pulling your shoulders down. So that's actually twice as much strain on your body. So a trick I'll use for that is if it's a pretty static shot, like if talent's not moving around a lot or I don't have to move around a lot, I'll take an apple box and just set my bag on top of the apple box and stand in place to take the strain off the rest of my body.
Okay.
If I don't have an apple box available, I might just might very nicely ask camera department if I can put it on their cart, or just see if there's something nearby I can like put my bag on while I boom. That's definitely the best way for me to save my body when I'm on set. For booming itself, I found that it's really actually not very much strain at all on my body, unless the boom is extended all the way and I'm using my shotgun mic, which is pretty heavy. For those shots, if I can help it, I'll actually rest the boom on top of my head, which a lot of boom ops will refuse to do because it looks goofy, but like, you gotta do what you gotta do to save your body, because this is my investment, and like, if my body starts not being able to handle the work a couple years down the line, I mean, I would definitely prefer that doesn't happen. So yeah, sure, I'll look a little goofy. It'll sound okay. It'll sound just as well. And yeah, I'll be breaking my body a little bit slower.
There was I want to ask you about your technique. Do you have a technique on how to aim the boom at somebody to pick up superior audio?
Yeah, so I'll typically, let's say this is the boom pole and this is a boom right here. I'll typically have it at an angle sort of like that, and then angle it towards them so it's pointed at their chest. So basically the pickup pattern, it'll catch... I've never actually explained this before, so bear with me. But that's basically the best angle to capture their voice.
So aiming it at their chest, their sternum, basically, to
Yeah.
as they're talking out. What about below? Is there anything?
That I really prefer not to do. Scooping. It's called scooping, and it's generally considered like a last ditch option when you absolutely cannot boom traditionally. It really depends on where you're at. Like outdoors, it's not as bad because there's no echo from the sky. Indoors, you are pointing at the ceiling.
Oh.
Which is likely to not sound great. But again, depends on the height of the ceiling and the material the walls are made of and stuff like that. If you can get if you're scooping, like booming from below, you can get it close enough to them so that so that the mic is still pointed at their chest and relatively close to there, it'll sound fine. But if it's a very wide shot and you have to scoop all the way from the floor, that's going to compromise sound quite a bit.
Interesting. See, teach me everything I never knew. There was a trade show for camera gear, and I remember distinctly seeing someone wearing a vest, boom operator, that had a pole that it would hold the boom for him, apparently. And then on the other side, he had like a rope or something hanging that he could just kind of adjust this way. Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah, actually, a lot of the people I work with in production have sent me that specific video. I guess just knowing that I'm a sound person and that might be interesting to me.
Yeah.
That could potentially be useful. Again, I would really only need the support if I'm using my shotgun mic and the boom is extended all the way and it's a very long take.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think you would compromise a lot of agility and mobility if you're using that rig. Like you wouldn't be able to boom as accurately if a lot of it is just like automated. Maybe you could. I don't know. I've never actually tried it. I think it's a good option to have. I don't foresee myself particularly needing one anytime soon.
I think mobility is the key word, because if you don't have it, then you have better range to adjust how you want it, right? Now, I think it's because most people, I have a boom pole and I've used it, so I know how light they are, but most people assume that you're feeling the weight, like the pole itself is heavy. And so I think that's why a lot of people just go, oh, that's a great invention. That's what you need, and then also in film, that when we're doing a take, usually the take is not going to be that long. And so you have time to kind of rest. You're not consistently holding your arms up, like an hour at a time. So, and I think there's a misconception there too. Have you ever run into anything where you're just like your arms were giving out all of a sudden?
Yeah, so those times when if my body really felt like it was at its end, it was always an outdoor wide shot. If it's super wide and the actors are talking, yeah, that means I gotta just hold the boom all the way up just to be out of frame. And like I cannot afford to just rest it on my head, so I'm just raw dogging that. Yeah, like when the pole's extended all the way, it just takes that much more force. Because at that point, you have to also pull down on this end so it doesn't like start going like that. So you're just pulling really hard with one hand and then also just trying to push up with the other. And the hand you're pushing up with, it'll put a lot of strain on your wrist.
Ooh.
So actually, I have a pair of workout gloves that have built-in wrist wraps.
Mm-hmm.
And they're meant for bench pressing so you don't strain your wrists that way when you're benching. I'm like, no, I should actually start bringing those on set for those really long takes that are wide shots. And for those super wides, the take doesn't even have to be that long to start hurting your body. I would say 2 or 3 minutes in that position, you will definitely start feeling the burn. Your lactic acid will be screaming at you. And yeah, a lot of the times you just have to go into this Zen mentality where you just close your eyes and gently sway back and forth to reduce the strain on your body and just don't think about the pain. Just think about, I don't know, just try to invest yourself into the scene or something that will take you away from your body screaming at you.
What about height? So I'm 5'3", so I feel like I would never make a good boom operator. Does height have anything to do with it?
I suspect that being taller would be an advantage. I'm 5'5", and I also honestly one of my big doubts going into the industry is, am I going to be tall enough to effectively boom? I'm happy to say I have not run into a situation where I was too short to do the job or do it effectively.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, like if you are like kind of short for the shot, which again doesn't happen often, like you can stand on an apple box or stand on a higher ledge. I will often just find something else to stand on that will give me extra height for an advantage. And I do like that mentality of like assessing what's nearby, what kind of tools can I use to make my job easier. And I like having that mentality on set.
Oh, sure. Have C stands. Have you ever, I've seen the little contraption. I have one of those too. That you can just set your boom pole in there, and the C stand goes pretty high. Have you ever used that before?
I haven't used that for narrative work. It's been for sit-down interviews and things like that. I would not recommend, unless you know it's going to be a static shot and that actor is not going to move around. And even then, no, having manual control over the boom during the take and be able to move it little bits as needed, I think is really important, because one of the number one, if not the number one key to good audio is good mic placement. And that's what boom ops are for.
I've learned my lesson on that one. Well, Daniel, I appreciate your time. I got a few more questions, then we'll wrap this up. What are you working on next? Anything in the near future? I know you said you had a shoot this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend has nothing to do with sound. I'm working as photographer for a show called Hollow Hollow Cabaret. It's an all-Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander burlesque drag and cabaret show over at the Rendezvous in Belltown.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I've been part of this show since 2022. The producer, Pinay Grigio, made this show because she was often the only Asian performer in shows. And like, I immediately resonated with that because often when I photograph drag or burlesque, I'm often the only Asian person in the building, which doesn't really make sense for Seattle because it's 15% Asian. So when 0% of people at the show are Asian, it's like, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
So yeah, she immediately knew I was the one to reach out to be a photographer. I photographed every show they've done since 2022.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. What is your favorite tech when it comes to film?
Okay, I do have a couple of things. My favorite microphone is a Sennheiser MKH50. It's a super cardioid mic. It's generally considered the best microphone to use indoors. Like any sound mixer will tell you, yeah, that's one if not the best microphone to use for indoor dialogue. And one of my most proud moments, I think, is when I was looking at a behind-the-scenes shot of The Dark Knight. It was a scene where like Batman is interrogating the Joker, and you can see the boom mic in the shot, and it's the exact same one that I had. So like that makes me feel really happy. Like
validation.
The same microphone that they used on The Dark Knight.
Yeah. Why only? Explain what you just said. What is it called? Super
cardioid or hypercardioid, they call it sometimes.
What does that mean for people who don't understand?
Oh, so when you think cardioid, think cardio as in the heart. It's a big heart-shaped pickup pattern, and it's called super or hyper because it's a big heart. I think it's kind of cute. In equally, shotgun mic has kind of cone-shaped pickup pattern similar to a shotgun spread. So yeah, typically the name of a microphone will tell you something about its pickup pattern. So yeah, super cardioid means a big heart.
How come they haven't made a microphone that can be versatile for both indoors and outdoors? Like you just hit a switch, do the cone, you know? I mean, like, I think Blue Yeti does that, right? Don't they have it? It's a best microphone and you could change the directional pickup.
Yeah, I mean, people talk a lot about that. Like when a photographer talks about which lens they need to use, they say, well, why can't you just use an all-in-one lens that does everything with zero compromise? And like, they do make lenses that try to do that. And I think that's also true for microphones. No one has ever recommended to me that I get some sort of special, like all-in-one microphone that can adjust its pickup pattern on the fly. So I only need one. They say, nah, you need a collection of mics. And maybe that's something that'll change as technology does, but for now I'm sticking with tried and true. Like, there's definitely room for experimentation or breaking from the mold, but especially when you're first starting out and when you have industry standards to meet, I think just going with standard equipment is the way to go until you get to the point where when you're doing well enough that you can start breaking the rules. Until then, I'm sticking with the classics.
What do you use for outdoor?
For outdoor, I use the Sennheiser NKH 416. It's also like an old workhorse. It's like a classic of the industry, built like a tank. A little on the heavy side, as I've been saying. Yeah, the MKH 50, on the other hand, is very light. Like, I will never get tired holding that mic on my boom, but it is very fragile. I once dropped it a distance of about, I think, 3 feet, and I had to get it repaired because it could not handle that 3-foot drop.
Holy smokes. Wow. What are your thoughts on AI when it comes to film and sound?
I'm wondering how much I should be worried about AI taking away my jobs. I'm thinking for a lot of corporate or commercial work, when AI improves, which could be in the next year or two, they might be able to make such a convincing talking head with such a convincing voice that they wouldn't actually need to hire an actor or a crew or anything. That's something that would hurt everyone. Like, it would hurt all the crew. It would hurt the producers, the talent. Yeah, that would probably screw me over too if they could just make AI voices that sound good enough to render our jobs obsolete.
Yeah, I think that's a consensus fear of that, 100%. And it's I think this is why community is so important, right? Because now we know who to reach out to, who can do this, who can do that. Daniel, how can people reach you? What's the best way?
I would say definitely my main social media presence is on Instagram at Daniel Chang Photography. No spaces or hyphens or anything, just those 3 words strung together. I don't post a lot of my film production stuff on there. It's mostly the photo and video work that I do. You could reach out to me on Facebook. I'm Daniel Chang. If you're looking to do more production oriented stuff and you're looking to bring a sound person on board, that's probably the best way to find me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Daniel. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. This was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, hope I